The chandeliers in the Ashcroft estate hadn't changed in decades. Same crystal droplets, same gaudy glow, like the entire dining room was trying too hard to pretend it belonged to another century. I stepped through the archway, heels clicking against the marble as faint classical music filled the air. And I knew exactly how the night would go. Another family dinner, another round of subtle humiliation. Claire Aunt Evelyn chirped, rising halfway from her chair. Still wearing black, dear, so mysterious. I forced a smile. Evening, Aunt Evelyn. She kissed the air near my cheek, never quite touching, never quite welcoming. I moved past her to the long mahogany table, noting the seating chart had placed me as usual near the fireplace. Away from the spotlight, away from the wine. Cassandra's just back from Italy, Evelyn announced loud enough for the staff to hear. You should ask her about the villa. I wouldn't call it a villa, Cassandra said, flipping her platinum hair over one shoulder. It's a vineyard. Technically, in Tuscany, the sunsets are unreal. Next to the Medrite, Preston chimed in, swirling his glass. I've got a ranch now, out near Jackson Hole. Silicon Valley types on both sides. Pricey neighbors, but worth it. I folded my napkin neatly on my lap. Sounds expansive. Preston turned toward me with a practiced smirk. And what about you, Claire, still in that duplex on Alder Street? Thought you'd outgrow that by now. I tilted my head. It's comfortable. Cassandra leaned in, voice laced with mock sympathy. You're still renting, right? That's so rare these days. Most people your age try to build equity. I nearly laughed. The Alder Street duplex was my company's first acquisition. West Pine Holdings had bought that building years ago. I didn't rent it. I owned it. But I said nothing. Well, Claire's always been a free spirit, Evelyn added, reaching for her wine. Creative, independent, the kind of words people use when they don't respect your choices, but don't want to look cruel. She's 34. Cassandra cut in, her tone as polished as her diamond cuff. You'd think she'd be ready to settle into something real. A mortgage, maybe. A husband. I'm happy, I replied simply. Are you? Preston asked. I mean, it's not too late. If you ever want help house hunting, I've got a friend in real estate. He could find you something decent. I'm in real estate, I said. They blinked. Evelyn's lips twitched. Of course you are, dear. You do showings, right? I sipped my iced tea. They thought I spent my days unlocking cheap one-bedrooms for college grads. They didn't know I signed contracts worth more than their entire wine cellar. They didn't know the estate we were sitting in, Ashcroft Plaza, had quietly been acquired by my firm 6 months ago. Through West Pine's private equity arm. Legally anonymous. Financially ironclad. They were eating and drinking and laughing on my property. Speaking of real estate, Cassandra continued, clearly entertained. Have you heard that whole block on Alder Street? Some firm bought it up. They're going to redevelop everything. You might get pushed out. I raised an eyebrow. Really? That's what I heard, she said with a shrug. Sad, really. But maybe you can move back into the guest house at Dad's place. Temporarily, of course. Of course, I echoed. Cassandra wasn't malicious, just oblivious. And so sure of her own superiority that she couldn't imagine a world where someone like me, quiet, unassuming, cardigan-wearing Claire, could be playing the long game. They didn't know that the block wasn't being bulldozed. I was restoring it, respectfully, brick by brick, family by family. Not for profit, for permanence. Well, let's not dwell, Evelyn said brightly. It's just nice to all be together. Even if we don't always make the same life choices. I nodded slowly. It is nice. Dad hadn't looked at me once since I walked in. He was half through his steak eyes, fixed on the far wall like it held the meaning of life, until Preston opened his mouth again. You know what's worrying the board, he said. This new mystery investor who bought into Ashcroft Plaza. No one knows who it is. Could be foreign. Could be dangerous. My fork paused midair. Some private equity firm, Cassandra added. They're auditing everything, even the family accounts. Dad finally looked up. It's causing trouble. Big trouble, Preston said. They've already flagged our budgets. The stuff you and Cassandra have been pushing through, labeled as client engagement. She waved it off. It's nothing. They're threatening to remove the whole management team, he said, glancing at Dad. Whoever owns this place now. They're not sentimental. They're just numbers people, Evelyn declared. They don't understand legacy. I bit down the smile rising behind my lips. Legacy, that's all I understood. When I bought Ashcroft Plaza through West Pine, I didn't just buy a building. I bought a chance to restore the Hale name, not to prestige, but to purpose. My great-grandfather had built affordable homes during the post-war era. He believed housing was dignity. My family had turned it into a status symbol. Do we know the investor's name? I asked innocently. No, Preston muttered. They're completely hidden behind layers of shell companies. Clever, I said softly. Cassandra shrugged. They'll show up eventually. People like that always want credit. I smiled and set down my glass. Maybe, I said, or maybe they'll let the silence speak. There was a beat of silence. No one quite understood what I meant. That was fine. They would. Soon. The morning after the family dinner, Claire Morgan sat in her office on the 29th floor of the West Pine Holdings headquarters in downtown Portland. From her desk, she could see the city waking up, cars crawling through intersections, cafes opening their patios, sunlight stretching across rooftops. The city had no idea what had happened the night before. But she did. And the silence that followed her family's cruelty was louder than any argument. She hadn't said a word to them. She didn't need to. Claire had built her entire empire on knowing when to stay quiet and when to strike. Today, she chose quiet. But that didn't mean she was idle. Her assistant Ileana entered without knocking a familiar manila envelope in hand. Courier just dropped this off, she said, laying it gently on the desk. No return address, but it was signed for by someone from Ashcroft. Claire raised an eyebrow. She opened the envelope with measured fingers. Inside was a printed contract, a formal agreement from the Ashcroft Plaza board requesting financial assistance for renovations. Her name was listed as a guarantor. She hadn't signed it. Claire leaned back in her chair. She flipped to the second page. There it was. The signature line, her name typed in clean font, and an illegible scrawl meant to pass as her signature. Forged. It didn't surprise her. Not really. But it did confirm something she'd suspected. For a while, they weren't just selfish, they were reckless. I want a copy scanned, time-stamped, and sent to our legal team, Claire said, handing it to Ileana. Label it fraudulent use of name. Already done, Ileana replied. And I flagged the originating sender. It came from Cassandra's husband's office. Of course it did. By noon, the family group chat lit up. Preston, anyone else get a weird email about compliance? Aunt Evelyn, what is Claire stirring up now? Claire, privately to Ileana, we don't reply. Not yet. Instead, Claire opened her personal archive, a secure digital folder labeled Ashcroft Holdings, Internal Risk. For years, she had documented transactions, property misuses, unpaid maintenance bills, and unlawful renovations filed under family names. Everyone had assumed she was passive. In truth, she had been building the strongest paper trail any legal counsel could ask for. That afternoon, another envelope arrived. This time glossy and embossed a wedding-style invitation. She opened it slowly. You are cordially invited to the Ashcroft Legacy Rebranding Gala hosted by the Ashcroft Family Venue. Ashcroft Plaza, supported by Claire Morgan, in fine script. Claire nearly laughed. They didn't just mock her. They had the audacity to use her name publicly as if she had approved the event. As if she were the one asking to be let back in. Ileana, she said, holding the invitation by the corner, have PR draft a public statement. Nothing reactive, just a simple correction, of course. What do you want it to send? Claire stood walking to the window. The glass reflected the city, hers, not theirs. She had earned every square foot. Make it clear I'm not affiliated with any upcoming Ashcroft event, she said. And add this line, any unauthorized use of my name or likeness will be met with formal legal review. Ileana nodded. Done. Anything else? Claire smiled faintly. Yes. Reach out to facilities. Have them pull the title deeds on Ashcroft Plaza. I want the original contracts printed. That night, Claire sat in her apartment, quiet jazz, playing low in the background. The world outside carried on, unaware of the storm slowly forming. Her laptop blinked. An alert. An account under Cassandra's name had attempted to access building plans labeled confidential. Claire took a deep breath. They thought they were operating in secret. They didn't know the building had eyes. And every eye reported back to her. She closed her laptop. Tomorrow would be fun. The morning light streamed through the tall windows of Maris Calder's office, catching the brass edges of her bookshelf and painting golden slashes across the oak floor. It was barely 7:15, and the hotel was still quiet except for the sound of carts being wheeled softly across the ballroom hall. Ina, her assistant, was already waiting by the glass door, holding a thick folder in one hand and her tablet in the other. You need to see this, Ina said without preamble, sliding the folder across the desk. Maris opened it slowly. Inside was a series of printouts, screenshots, and stills taken from the Somerset security footage. In the center frame, Sarin Calder, standing in the grand foyer, arms crossed, chin lifted, her manicured fingers pointing this way and that as she gave staff instructions, like she was the venue director herself. Underneath the photo was the caption from a video Sarin had posted on her social media. Some of us were born to shine, others just clean up after. Maris's jaw tightened. She went viral overnight, Ina added, pulling up the stats. 500,000 views, mostly positive. Hashtags include #princess treatment, #sister paid, living soft. Maris leaned back in her chair. She wants the attention more than the party, and she's getting both. The troubling part wasn't the arrogance. It wasn't even the public lie that Maris had offered Somerset out of sisterly love. It was what was attached to that lie, an assumption of ownership, access, and control. Sarin wasn't just claiming the venue emotionally. She had begun to act as if Somerset belonged to her on paper. Vendors have started reaching out, Ina continued. Some invoices are being sent directly to our finance office. She's signing off as on behalf of the owner. And she's using your full name. Maris stood. Did she forge my signature? No signature needed. She just printed the documents with your name in the footer, like she has implicit approval. It wasn't sloppiness. It was strategic recklessness. Sarin understood the pressure of perception. Once a narrative was out in the world, it became harder to refute without looking petty or vindictive. She was counting on Maris to stay quiet to keep her image pristine and professional. Maris walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the garden below. A couple was taking wedding photos near the pergola, laughing, spinning the bride's veil, catching in the wind. This place had been her quiet dream, her rebellion against the cold practicality of the Calder family. And now Serene was dragging it into a spectacle. I want every communication archive, she said, her voice calm but clipped. Every email, every signed agreement, every voice message. Ina nodded. Already started. I created a folder labeled Liability Evidence, internal only. Maris turned back, her eyes sharper now. Good. Because the moment she steps out of line, in front of a guest, or breaches contract with a vendor, I want to be ready. Later that afternoon, a silver-embossed envelope arrived at the front desk of Somerset. Inside was a formal invitation to Sarin Calder's birthday gala. The venue, Somerset. The dress code, black tie luxury. The RSVP, by invitation only. But what drew Maris's eyes was the footer of the printed card. Venue generously supported by Maris Calder. Maris stared at the card, reading it again, this time slower. She hadn't approved this. She hadn't agreed to anything. And yet, her name, her brand, her legacy was now the linchpin of a fantasy Saren had sold to hundreds of guests. She placed the invitation on her desk and looked up at Ina. She's staging her coronation. Ina raised an eyebrow. You going to let her crown herself? Maris tapped her pen against the desk. No. I'm going to let her finish building the stage. And when the spotlight's on, she'll show the world exactly who she is. They didn't need to sabotage anything. They didn't need to scream. Saren was handing them everything on paper, on video, on record. All they had to do was press record and wait. Maris opened a new folder on her computer, this one titled Event Day, Live Review Protocol. Because when the lights came on, it wouldn't just be Saren's name in the spotlight. It would be Somerset's reputation too. And Maris Calder had never lost a room she built from the ground up. The chandeliers gleamed like 1,000 eyes watching. Gold-trimmed florals curled around marble columns, and a string quartet played near the garden doors, their instruments echoing off the glass ceiling of Ashcroft Plaza's grand ballroom. Cassandra arrived 20 minutes late. Her heels clicked against the marble floor like a drumline, announcing royalty. She entered not as a bride, not even as a host, but as a woman who believed she owned everything her eyes landed on. Behind her, the Monroe family followed, regal in posture and cautious in gaze. Eloise Monroe, her future mother-in-law, had the poise of someone who had hosted governors in her garden. She was not easily impressed, and definitely not easily deceived. Claire Morgan stood on the second-floor mezzanine, silent, unseen. Her navy blazer matched the sky outside, cool, even unreadable. She sipped her tea as the final guests filed in below. Ina stood stationed by the ballroom entrance. Her earpiece buzzed lightly, receiving real-time updates from security audio and floor staff. Everything was under control. They had let the show go on because sometimes the most powerful move was no move at all. Cassandra fluttered from guest to guest like a pageant queen on borrowed time. She gestured to the archways, the imported orchids, the velvet-covered chairs. Oh yes, I handpicked the layout, she told a woman from the Monroe Foundation. These ceilings, custom lighting imported from Italy. Claire helped with some logistics, of course. But the vision, all mine. Claire raised one brow, then turned back to her laptop where 2 windows were open. Live feed from Ballroom Camera 4, and a neatly organized folder labeled Client Misconduct. Cassandra Hale, 3.2 violations. It wasn't just the lies. It was the entitlement. The ease with which Cassandra dismissed years of quiet labor with a wave of her manicured hand. And she didn't stop. She berated the lighting technician for being too average. She scoffed at a young catering assistant for placing napkins half an inch off-center. She even rolled her eyes when Becca Monroe's younger cousin asked if Ashcroft Plaza had a sustainability policy. "Oh, sweetie," she said, "it's a luxury venue, not a community garden." Eloise Monroe caught that. Claire watched her eyes narrow, not in fury, but in evaluation. Silent, sharp judgment. The kind that didn't announce itself. The kind that killed deals. It was time. Claire set her cup down, smoothed her lapel, and began her descent. As if on cue, the background music faded and conversation dipped just low enough for heels on marble to sound like clockwork ticking. Claire didn't rush. She descended each step with practiced precision. She had built this place from the ground up. Every chandelier, every door handle, every polished tile was her work. Now she would take back the room. She reached the base of the staircase just as Eloise Monroe asked, "And who owns this place exactly?" Cassandra blinked. "Oh, I mean, technically, it's good evening." Claire's voice cut through like velvet over glass. Every head turned. "Welcome to Ashcroft Plaza. I'm Claire Morgan, owner and CEO of West Pine Holdings." Silence froze midair. Eloise turned to her with a warm but measured smile. "It's a pleasure, Ms. Morgan. We've heard of your work. I didn't realize you were connected to the venue directly. I'm connected to every brick, Claire said, steady, and to every contract with my name on it. Beckham Monroe gave Claire a slow nod. Cassandra, meanwhile, stood beside the cake table, lips parted, eyes wide, mascara just beginning to smudge. Her face had turned as pale as the linen behind her. Cassandra L.O.N. said, still facing Claire. You never mentioned your sister was the actual owner. Claire met her sister's eyes for the first time that evening. It's a common oversight. The pause that followed was exquisite. Cassandra tried to speak, but produced only a breathy laugh. Well, I mean, Claire's always been private. Claire smiled. Discreet, actually, especially with things that matter. She turned her attention back to L.O.N. I'm glad to have you here. I hope your family enjoys the evening. We already are, L.O.N. replied. It's rare to see this level of taste and control. Very refreshing. Claire nodded politely and walked away. But not before catching Beckham's expression, no longer distracted, no longer confused. It was recognition, understanding, and maybe a little respect. The party continued, but the center had shifted. Guests now approached Claire for a word, a handshake, a compliment. Cassandra stood sidelined, her designer dress radiant, her presence irrelevant. Hours later, when the last toast had been made and the last flute of champagne had been cleared, Claire returned to her office upstairs. The lights were low. Ina waited by the desk, her tablet in hand. Camera caught everything Claire asked. Multiple angles, Ina confirmed. And the Monroe family's PR rep already followed you on LinkedIn. Claire allowed herself a breath. Not triumph, not revenge, just clarity. She opened the folder marked 3.2 violations, pulled up a summary of Cassandra's conduct, and saved the full video. A legal review would follow in the morning. And then came the knock. 3 light taps, not timid, not confrontational, just inevitable. Claire didn't turn. It's open. The door creaked. Cassandra stepped inside, arms folded, mascara faded. You humiliated me. Claire didn't respond. I'm your sister. That used to mean something, Claire said, softly, eyes on her screen. Then you used my name without asking. My space without paying. My staff like they were your props. Cassandra flinched. It was just a party. It was never just a party. Claire finally looked up. If you have concerns about how my team handled the event, you're welcome to file a complaint. Cassandra stared at her, half in anger, half in disbelief. You're serious? Claire tilted her head. I'm professional. Another pause. Please don't ruin me. Claire stood up, walked to the door, held it open. You did that all on your own. Cassandra walked out slowly. Her heels no longer confident but cautious, unsure of the ground beneath her. Claire closed the door gently behind her, then returned to her desk, pressed save, and titled the new document. The day they lost the room. The first knock was soft, like hesitation had a sound. The second was firmer. By the third, I already knew who it was. I didn't rush to answer. I wanted the silence to do its work before I stepped into whatever theater waited on the other side of the door. Ina glanced at me from across the office with a look that said, "Do you want me to handle it?" I shook my head. I straightened the cuffs of my blazer and walked to the door of the boardroom I had finally claimed. When I opened it, I found my father standing there, not in a tailored suit or polished shoes, like the man who used to scold me for wearing flats to family dinners, no. He wore a windbreaker faded jeans and the expression of a man who no longer held the keys. Claire, he said, not with pride, not with anger, but with the careful neutrality of someone who had nothing left to gamble. I stepped aside. You have 5 minutes. He looked around the space, Ashcroft Plaza's top floor, now converted into the West Pine Holdings executive suite. My name, my walls, my rules. He didn't sit. Just stood there, holding his hat in both hands, like he needed something to grip or he'd disappear. Your mother wanted to come, he began. I'm sure. She's not well. I didn't ask for elaboration. I wasn't here to re-enter the roles they had written for me. I was here, as always, to stay awake inside my own truth. You built all this, he said, voice low. Quietly. Loud success only draws louder knives. He nodded once, as if he understood that now, in a way he never did when I was a teenager, staying late after school learning property law while they laughed about how bad I was at fitting in. We never knew, he said, finally meeting my eyes, what you were really doing. You never asked, I replied. He flinched, but not much. He had come for something else. We were wrong about you, he said. I was wrong about you. I didn't say thank you. Some confessions come too late to be called gifts. Then carefully he pulled a folded letter from his coat pocket and placed it on my desk. It's not legal, not a demand, just words. You can toss it after. I stared at the envelope. Handwritten, my name, no title, just Claire. What do you want from me? I asked, voice level. He looked down. Just one chair. I didn't follow. One seat at the table, he said. When this family gathers again, if it ever does, don't lock the door entirely. I let the silence stretch. I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't about to make him comfortable either. Comfort had always been reserved for those who obeyed, never for those who endured. He turned to leave. Wait, I said. He looked back, almost hopeful. You want a chair, I asked. He nodded. Then earn it. Show up not as father, not as patriarch, but as someone who understands what it's like to be the last one seated or not seated at all. He opened his mouth, closed it again, and then he left. I sat down, stared at the envelope for a long time before slipping it unopened into the drawer marked personal, not urgent. That afternoon, I walked through Ashcroft Plaza's atrium alone. The fountain had been restored. The marble gleamed. The new directory bore West Pine's name in crisp serif type. Guests passed by without a second glance. Just another woman in navy walking with purpose. They didn't know that I had once been the poor niece, the one dismissed for drinking iced tea instead of wine. That night I returned to my home on Alder Street, the same building they once mocked. I lit a candle in the corner window, a quiet ritual I kept for endings. Not funerals. Just closures. From the balcony I could see the city breathing beneath a soft fog. And then another knock. This one at the unit door. I opened it slowly. It was Cassandra. Her makeup was light. Her posture less performative. She didn't come in heels or gold. Just jeans and a gray coat, hands empty expression, almost human. Hi, she said. I waited. I wanted to say something, she continued. Not for forgiveness. I know I don't get to ask for that. I crossed my arms. I was cruel, she said. And entitled. And I used your silence as permission. You did, I said. I used your image. Mocked it. And you still let me have that room. I didn't respond. She took a deep breath. You won't believe me, but that night, when you came down the stairs, it didn't feel like losing. It felt like being seen by someone who should have never had to prove herself to begin with. Her voice cracked slightly. I've started over. Real job, no favors, just something real. And why are you here now? I asked. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small card. Not fancy. Not printed on thick stock. Just a business card with her name and a title beneath it. Assistant leasing coordinator, she said, smiling wryly. It's not much. I took the card. It's yours. That makes it enough. She nodded. And Claire? Yes. If you ever decide to build something new, something that needs a team, I'd like to apply. That surprised me. I didn't promise anything. But I also didn't close the door. Later that night, as I made tea, I thought about chairs. Who earns them? Who assumes them? Who is never offered one? The next morning, I stood before the full board of Ashcroft Plaza. This time, not for confrontation, but transition. My name is Claire Morgan, I began. For years, you didn't see me, and that was fine. I wasn't building this to be seen. I was building it to endure. No one interrupted. I was called poor, invisible, small. And yet, I hold the deeds, the plans, and the values that will carry this legacy forward, not because of blood, but because of merit. I glanced at the empty chair at the end of the table. Then I walked over to it, pulled it out, and sat down. And if you want more empowering stories like this, real moments of justice, growth, and dignity, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you won't miss what's coming next. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.